It's time for episode 45 of Delivering Marketing Joy. This time we talk with Chris Edmonds, who tells us why we need an organizational constitution and how you can make your culture engine purr. Hello and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am very excited to have with me today a super duper guest named Chris Edmonds. He's the author of the book Culture Engine, and I'm really excited to jump in and talk to you about this. Chris, thanks for being here.
Love the opportunity to speak with you about culture and love the chance to play with technology with Skype here.
Absolutely. So, I'm a big believer in creating a company that has great culture. It's something I strive to do. If for no other reason, I just want to have a place that I want to come to work.
Yeah.
But you, in your book, you talk about creating an organizational constitution. I've never heard of that. Why is that important?
Well, what's interesting in working with senior leaders of big organizations, multinationals, global organizations, small businesses, and everything in between, what has been very, very consistent is that leaders have really never been taught how to pay attention to culture. If they do pay attention to culture, they didn't know how to fix it. They didn't know what to tweak. They haven't had role models that have been savvy about, the degree of trust, respect, and dignity in our organization isn't very good. So, and it leads to customer service issues. There's all kinds of fascinating things. They're all really related to the way the culture operates. And so what I realized I needed to do, this is probably 25 years ago, was to start to go back to what one of my great bosses created and to try to, in essence, create a template from what he did with us. And in essence, an organizational constitution is a set of agreements that does two things. It formalizes performance expectations, which, by the way, most of us as leaders, we're comfortable with that. We can do strategic planning, we can get goals set, and we can manage the tar out of what do I measure, what do I monitor, what do I reward from a results standpoint.
Right.
What we haven't been able to do very effectively without some guidance is to have the culture work well, to have people be treated consistently with trust, dignity, and respect. So I went back to So part of an organizational constitution needs to include strategies and goals. That'll take care of the performance side. What we need to do is to get a clear purpose, a present day purpose that's beyond making money, because making money is a good thing, right?
Sure.
But making money doesn't inspire part-time employees, frontline employees. They may not see anything bigger in their paycheck every 2 weeks if we make a lot of money or not a lot of money. So there's got to be some meaning to the work and some values that we're going to agree to. That means we are going to structure being nice. And that's kind of the core of an organizational constitution. And the language very comfortable for Americans, but I've shared this with global audiences. We can go back to the Magna Carta if you'd like, because those kinds of liberating rules are really what organizations and teams and departments and divisions need. So the idea of a constitution is, okay, I get it, formalizing rules, but then the leaders can't just announce them and go about their merry way. They actually have to live them, coach them, reinforce them, not tolerate bad behaviors. But it's an interesting dynamic because it's in essence taking what has been an exclusive focus on results and saying, good, right, stay with that. Although cut the time you invest in that by half, and now invest, if we look at an XY graph, now do the values thing too. Pay attention to the way people treat each other, formalize values, expectations, and then don't tolerate anything less.
Yeah, it's interesting. I very recently had this conversation where it's so funny that I think sometimes companies lose sight of the fact that happy customers or happy employees mean happy customers, right?
Exactly. It's such an interesting dynamic. I love the engagement kind of interest that many leaders have, and Gallup's done such a great job of that. Blessing White does. It's a new company out of Washington State called Tiny HR that has crafted a 2-minute long, once a week, all employees go to Tiny Pulse, and they basically do 2 minutes of of an engagement survey. It's live, it's quick, and they've really crafted a tool that helps leaders understand the quality of employee engagement. And the reality is that values and rules for being nice and respectful all kind of form the culture. And I always say that values aren't your culture, but they define your culture. So there's some really cool tools around employee engagement and understanding that if employees aren't engaged, that's going to play out in their relationships with customers.
For sure. Well, what are some mistakes that you see leaders making when they try to consider culture? It feels like that's a buzzword right now. Right?
It is. It is. And in fact, what did I celebrate? In 2014, Merriam-Webster said, culture is our word of the year. All that means is there's a lot more leaders, there's a lot more people trying to kind of understand, so what is an organizational culture? How do I fix it? How do I reframe it? What do I do about it? So there's a couple of key things that leaders, with the best of intentions, kind of screw up. And so one is to announce that we're not going to behave this way anymore. So now I've given you the rules. Please follow them. So that's kind of managing by hope, right? And the managing by announcements only works if the announcements follow with reinforcement, with demonstration, with not tolerating bad behavior, yada yada yada. So the idea of trying to tell people what to do, the managing by announcements doesn't work. We've never seen it work with our kids. Why should we? And sometimes the cats never replied, the dogs maybe, but the reality is that it takes more than just announcing or throwing a fit. And I have to tell a quick story. I had a client that a small organization, probably 40 people maybe, and they had such an interesting dynamic amongst the senior leaders that the leaders were so used to being aggressive with each other that at one stage there was this knockdown, drag out, screaming, cussing in the office in front of 20 people between two senior leaders. And I interviewing the CEO going, tell me a little bit about your culture. He said, well, there's some good stuff, but there's some weird stuff like this. And I said, well, what'd you do? He says, I told them to stop. I couldn't help it. I laughed. And I said, I did the kind of the Dr. Phil thing. How'd that work? How'd that work? And it's like, yeah, they keep doing it. It's like, you got to change the rules. You got to change the rules. And so part of the managing by announcements thing is truly that step one of 100 to kind of get the culture to shift. Right. The other thing, how to act with each other. We know how to be nice. So I'm just going to ignore this. This was a blip. And I'm just going to trust that everyone's going to now behave nicely. And in essence, there's no announcements. There's no reference. There's absolutely an absence of culture leadership. And guess what happens? Same stuff continues to happen. And the reality is that as I start to help leaders learn about, tell me what you monitor, tell me what you measure, tell me what you reward. And of course, they've got all kinds of dashboards. They've all got bonuses for great sales or bonuses for great service. Or I said, good. To what extent are you measuring, monitoring, and rewarding kindness and cooperative interaction and sharing of and they look at me like I'm from another planet. And I said, you're doing half of it right. Half of your job you got totally wired. Oh, let's now, for 20 years you've been ignoring this. Now let's get you to actually pay as much attention to and reward and incent the kind of treatment that you expect. And they look at me like, how do I do that? And I say organizational constitution, and there's a bit of I'm going to craft some rules, right? And then I'm going to spend a long time aligning. Yes, you are.
So just again, real quick. So if you're like somebody's listening to this and they're like, you know what, I buy it, right? I want to institute a few things. What are some quick things that they can? And I understand it's a long process, so I don't want to minimize that. But something that you can start tomorrow, the next day, a month from now. What are some things people can do to improve culture leadership?
The first thing that I suggest leaders do is to go out and kind of get a sense of what's happening now. There's in essence a current culture that may not be intentional, that may not have been crafted with anything in mind, but you kind of got to go smell it out. So, and it's how do people see the way they're treated? And in some cases, now having a senior leader wander around and go, so tell me how the culture is, that's going to be so odd. People are going to think, well, hopefully this will pass because this is an odd question. This is a tough question. So typically what I ask leaders to do is to go out and say, tell me what you think the purpose of our company is. Tell me what you think the purpose of our team is. What's our team's reason for being? Now, the reality is you're going to get really depressing answers, right? You're going to get, we sell coffee, we make money, we make sandwiches, we build cars, whatever it is. And what I need the leaders to be able to do is to have them understand that the reason why people think that is that's been reinforced for decades.
Right.
So now if we start to look at, who are we serving? To what end? Do we actually want to make money? Yes. Do you have to formalize that? No. You're still going to watch, the dollars and dimes anyway. You're going to watch that. But maybe you've got an organization that can improve the community. Maybe you can make, people's lives better to some extent. Had a wonderful experience with a fast food general manager who, in hiring all these new teenagers to, flip burgers and to make tacos or whatever it is, they were just kind of going through the motions. And we've seen in the past, thankfully long past, some very sick kids come from not having food cooked well enough, all that kind of stuff. And so they said, what do well, we're just turning burgers and we have 38 seconds to do them. It's like, no, you're actually helping parents make their kids' lives easier. You're serving healthy meals. And all of a sudden the kids went from, I'm earning money for my car insurance to actually have a responsibility to serve my customers. And it was totally cool. And now, is that a normal conversation that many fast food GMs have? No. But they could. They could. They don't need anyone from corporate or from the owners to say, well, now you should pay attention to purpose. Because what's cool about the purpose clarity is it starts to get people to say, who are we serving? And to what end? That's a huge, huge shift. Now, as you say, getting into values and getting into some behavioral definition of values so you get to the kind of clarity as much as with performance expectations, with values expectations, that's a bit longer and more complex. And the Culture Engine book actually has worksheets at the end of every chapter to help a leader do that. But the first place I'd start is to get purpose clear. And you can get people in your organization to understand there's more to the business than making money, you might have something. You might have something there.
That's awesome, Chris. And again, for somebody who wants to dig in, you want to check out the Culture Engine. So you've answered my questions, Chris. I give everybody a chance to ask me one, so I'll let you do that.
Well, you and I spoke just before we started with the recording that you've interviewed hundreds of folks. And so one of the things that I've learned over the past couple of years, and as we talked, everything that I do is around marketing this idea. I'm so passionate about helping leaders create workplace inspiration as opposed to workplace frustration. What have you noticed about internet marketing? What have you noticed about social media? Is it overused? Is there something that I could do differently, that an author could do differently, that a quote guru can do differently to kind of help get ideas out that can really legitimately help people better? Because I'm still learning about internet marketing, and I love Twitter, and I didn't get Twitter for a long time. I'm getting better at it, but I'd love to know what you've seen as a best practice for getting some ideas actually heard.
That's a great, I think, Chris, we're living through a time that the term marketing is just changing so unbelievably rapidly. So a couple thoughts that come to my mind is, one of the things that I'm working on right here is platform sharing. So I get the opportunity to talk to you and learn, quite frankly, but I'm sharing with my audience ideas that you have. I'm actually reading another book right now called Brandscaping, and it talks to this.
I've heard that.
Yeah. And so if it were me, I would be looking at an opportunity where I'd say, okay, what are places and businesses and organizations where we share values that we might be able to share content? And I think that would help to increase audience and therefore hopefully increase credibility and share the message. That's a
Yeah, but it's getting better ears out there too. That's a great idea. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, seriously, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. And I continued success on the book, and certainly want to recommend everybody check it out. And maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Would love to, Kirby. Appreciate the opportunity and excited about getting the word out about the culture engine.
Awesome. All right. Well, that wraps up another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We will see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching, but wait! Can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it already. The way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe!